I get out of this now?
Hi guys. Oh no, she's back. And here you thought you had a substitute teacher for the day. Okay, what on earth have I been doing? Well, I started out being curious as to how my pencils would hold up if I actually put some of my pieces on display in my home. But I have no patience whatsoever. Just as I rolled over my Prismacolor to see how durable it would be, I placed my pencils in a very extreme situation. And I was quite surprised, to be perfectly honest, at my results. And before I go into discussing what I found, let's just discuss a little bit about what I was doing and what is Lightfastness. Now, to artists, Lightfastness is a concept that is very important to them. They make a living selling their work. They need pencils that are going to last. Nobody's going to want to put a picture on the wall only to be have it returned to them because the color's faded out really quickly. It's not surprising that some of the less expensive pencils did not hold up in this test. After all, it was extreme. I was more concerned of what did hold up when it came to the inexpensive pencils. Now, I did some research with the help of my friend Tammy, who nudged me in the right direction in going with this. What testing does each company do to come up with their ratings for each one of their pencils? And I have some generalizations that I found from reading all the information that I did on this subject. First of all, their tests are not that far off from my test. I was a little bit surprised about that. A lot of the companies, they do test in Arizona and they test in Florida. Now, I don't know if they test their pencils against each other. My test was testing the pencils against each other. Which one was going to hold up in the extreme situation? They test for 3 months, and their controls were a little bit different than mine, of course. We all expect pencils to fade. That's going to happen. It's the nature of the pigment that they use. It's the same pigment that they use in printing, the same thing when it comes to paints. But pencils are very prone to fading. So let's just discuss a little bit further what I found and why some of these things were surprising and not surprising. Well, first of all, Liqui Mark, which is the dollar store brand of colored pencils, they did very poorly, and I wouldn't have expected them to do any better than that. They're not artist pencils, they're just colored pencils. So they died, both sealed and unsealed. I was just a little bit more surprised that they held up as long as they did. Believe it or not, they died later on, like maybe the halfway point, and I was getting really excited that the Liqui Mark was holding up on my test. Now, Sudee styles, which I expected to completely die out, reds do die quicker than the blues. It's the nature of the red. Sudee styles held up better with the sealed, of course, and they actually did pretty good. Considering, I mean, if you look at, this is the sealed version, this is the unsealed version. If you look at its counterparts of the inexpensive pencils, Sudee styles really did the job. And that came in at about 15 cents a pencil. Now, I used the sets of pencils. I found the cheapest one I could possibly find, and then I divided it by the number of pencils in the set. And I tried to look at the largest set. So if I was looking at like Prismacolor with 150 pencils, I found the cheapest price that I could possibly find for Prismacolor and then divided that up. So they were equal, all of these, and roughly, because, you know, there's money to be made at, or from the manufacturer to the distributor to the wholesaler to the, you know, and so on down the line, you can expect the manufacturing cost of these pencils are very inexpensive. So if Liqui Mark was 10 cents at the retail end, you could just imagine it costing maybe a penny to produce. So here we have Sudee Styles, which is 15 cents. Holding up nicer. Now, I was a little bit more surprised at Arteza, but when I did research into their testing, their reds did very poorly. And everybody that has done Lightfast tests on it have said their reds really died out quickly. And I would have to be honest and say that Arteza died within a couple of days of being exposed in the sun. That was a little bit more concerning. And more realistic is what happens if you leave your book outside. It's not unheard of, okay? And then a couple days later, your pencils are, your pages are faded. So that concerned me, but not. This is where I really had my surprise. Shipir Farben, which is an oil-based pencil, coming in at 44 cents a pencil, held up like a champ. Now, I said in the thing that it lived, if you consider what it went through on the less expensive pencil, this was the major star. The Shipir Farbens was a major star and surprise of this entire test. Prismacolor, of course, they held up like a champ. Both the sealed and unsealed held its color. Now you could see a slight discoloration in the sealed as opposed to the unsealed also, which is concerning. There was a little bit more fading in the sealed version. Polychromos held up like a champ on both sealed and unsealed. Derwent Colorsoft like a champ, but I expect that to hold up. These are pencils that I expect if I'm going to use, and I'm going to pass these coloring books down to my great-grandchildren, I want my colors to be bright. And this was kind of like the thing that was in the back of my head when I did this test was I have a lot of people who are taking their books and they're actually creating legacy books. They're choosing a book and doing every page in the book and passing it down in the family to maybe writing some notes in it to their future self, which I'm planning on doing. So it is a concern to me that since I am going to pass down at least one of these books as a legacy to myself and my art and my life, I want my colors to hold up. So Derwent was good. Now Caran, who has a really good reputation, it's a more expensive pencil. Art grade pencils did not hold up on the unsealed as much as it did on the sealed. Here's where the sealed version really shows itself. It did protect it because the unsealed version, I had quite a difference. Now I know I got a little blue on there. It was on my hand when I did this test, and I was just being lazy about doing another one of these because it took me a while to do it. So, but you could definitely see from the control to the uncontrol a big difference, more so than any of the other more expensive pencils. It's not that Caran is not a good pencil. Of course it is. It's artist grade, and of course Holbein didn't even make a dent in Holbein. So the big surprises were the Sudee styles, the Shipir Farbens, and the Caran. But now let's now all of a sudden people are going to start saying, oh my God, but your test wasn't real, you're trashing pencils. That I'm not really trashing them. Okay? I am saying my test was extreme. But in the research that I did, they test in Arizona and they test in Florida. They also test for 3 months. I didn't test for 3 months. I blasted it with more radiation that they did, that I would imagine they gave in Arizona and in Florida. In fact, I think the tests, they put them on walls in rooms with open windows or just glass on the window. I exposed these literally to every element. I only covered them because I didn't want wind, and we get a lot of windstorms, we did not get a lot of windstorms during the time of the test, and I had no rain. I think there was one day with a slight hazy drizzle, and I kept going out there and looking at it and wiping it down and making sure it was fine, and it was. There was no damage to the paper, and it was sealed in plastic. I did contact the baggie company, and they did say that these bags that I was using were not UV resistant, so we were safe in that point. They do make UV resistant bags. Okay, I've gotten out some of the standards for 2 different types of testing. One is the blue wool, and one is the ASTM rating. This scale is available on Wikipedia, on many different websites. It's kind of the standard that people look to. And to help you understand it a little better, what they do for testing pencils is they expose during summer and winter. Now, a lot of these pencil companies don't specifically tell you their procedures. Now, you have to understand the result of these tests are going to be affected by, 1, how much radiation, the direction of the radiation. So, is it getting X amount of hours of exposure? This is not put into the literature or any literature that I could find. What they do is they tell you the end result. And this is kind of how they get to that end result. They place a standard card with the pigment of the pencil that they're using together. And they sort of measure the degree of fading. Now, here it is. It looks like 4 to 8 days it started to change. It would have poor light fastness. And in the winter, 2 to 4 weeks, it would have poor light fastness. Now, what does this equal out to? Well, 2 to 15 years it will last. Now, this is very confusing because once the pencil starts to change and bleach out, you could be destroying some of the details in the picture. So this is where it's a little skewed. And the pencil companies are not forthcoming. I guess if I nagged at them and contacted them personally, I wanted to know their exact testing procedures and then try to reproduce it, it would be virtually impossible for me to do that. So what I did, and why I did it the way I did it, is I just went to the maximum. You can't get any more maximum exposure than the Mojave Desert. And it just so happens where I put the 2 samples, I get direct sunlight all day long. That's the worst area in my entire yard. We actually, to use my barbecue, we have to actually move the barbecue because nobody can stand in that spot for any length of time when it comes to the sun. It's just too strong. It's unhealthy. So I did the most extreme. Well, let's just test out the most extreme. And let's test them out against each other and see. I'll be able to see a better result when I have something to compare it to. So while my testing method was very extreme and maybe not the same as what the companies were doing, I got a general idea and a good one of what happens to these pencils. Now, why did I do this? Well, if you think about it, on my channel, I have a lot of newbies. People who have not been using colored pencils for a very long time, and they come to me and they want to know how to use them. Well, if I can catch the new people early before they create anything that they want to pass down or actually display, then I will save a little bit of heartache down the road in talking about this. Now, a lot of people are using the more inexpensive pencils. Those are really good pencils for learning. Now, I know that Arteza did not do very well in this test. You could see it was the one that I got it. I'm a little bit more disturbed that they call themselves expert pencils. That's kind of like a marketing thing and not really, they can't compare to the pencils that people use on the expert level. It's their expert line of pencils. But it's a good learning pencil. Things that won't be displayed, your books don't get that much UVB. I mean, you close up your books, you put them on a shelf, they get very little light. They're going to last. Now, even the poor pencils, before they start testing, now, Arteza's red tested out that even they say it's not a light fast pencil. So this is not anything new that's not even out there. It's a known fact. The next concept in this that I want to explain to you is that why I tested only using red, yellow, and blue. I was testing pencils against each other. I was not looking for a level of... I was looking more for a comparison of the pencils than I was to actually debate whether a pencil is or is not light fast. I wanted to look at, as a general whole, what price range you would get as far as light fast. Now, why I only tested red, yellow, and blue is because those are the primary colors. Now, the way the light fast goes, or the way pencils bleach out, the reds always bleach first. I think followed by the yellow, and then blue holds up. Blue held up the best across the line also, which is pretty much common. But here you have, say, the color purple. What happens to color purple? blue and red make purple, you mix them together, what is the Lightfastness going to do? What I understand from reading everybody's articles, I read so many articles on this and so many people's tests and try to interpret their tests too, is that when you have a purple or a combination pencil, you're going to expect it to change to a different color. So if I put out a purple color, it would have turned blue. The red would have faded out, the blue would have held up, the pencil would have, over time, turned blue. With the orange pencils, you'd have the same thing. Yellow kind of sits in the middle as far as generalized durability across the board. So now I'm looking at the yellow, I'm looking at red. If I mix yellow and red, which gets mixed in the making of the orange pencils, and that's how pencils, they take their blue, they take their red, they mix different combinations of it. Some have more red, some have more blue. It's the same way I'm teaching you how to blend. So you would look at orange and say, well, we would have a color change in the orange, not as fast as the red because it has yellow in it, but it will over time turn more towards the yellow. And that is concerning too, because you have a mixture of all these colors in there. So what do you do? Well, if you're working on a book, say for your grandchildren that you're passing on, the only thing that I can tell you to do is to go to a expert pencil. All my tests, Prismacolor down, were fine. They all tested out with the most brightest sun there can possibly be, more than what was tested out with in the companies, and they passed my extreme test. You're going to be fine in the books. You're also going to have to understand that in the books they have less light exposure. Your pictures are not going to fade, not even the Arteza, to that degree. Now, if you're thinking about using some of the lesser expensive pencils, you got to just keep that in mind. How much light exposure? Are you making pictures to be exposed to the elements for the walls that you plan on keeping and passing down, where it would be 50 to 100 years that these pictures will be around? These are things you have to think about depending on what your situation and what you are doing the art for. So I just wanted to bring the whole entire issue of Lightfastness to your attention, because a lot of people on the beginning level have no idea what this is. And Lightfastness is just how well a pencil will hold up to fading. If a pencil holds up to fading, it's considered a light fast pencil. And depending on the degree or the number, now on the blue wool rating, 1 is the poorest, 8 is the best. So if you go to the internet and you look up your brand of pencil and it has a 7 as the rating, it doesn't start fading for 3 to 4 months with direct summer sun, which is basically what I exposed it to. And you can expect that under normal conditions will last over 100 years. You can't ask for more than that. Okay, after that, you're looking at, extremely archival. You're looking at some other things I'm about to speak about. Okay, there is one other thing that I wanted to talk about, and this is a problem with books in general, in all the paper books that we are using. Is the paper that the book is being printed on acid-free? Now, you would think in the day and age that all companies would use acid-free, and this would be not a problem. But in all the books that I have, I believe only Color It, yay, Color It, discusses whether or not their paper is acid-free. And that's because Color It are colorers. But when I looked at a lot of the other papers in the literature, there's nothing that says it in the books. Now, I can go look up the companies and look up the specific paper. I'm not going to do that. And what happens with acid? When a paper has acid in it and is not acid free, that paper will yellow over time. The chemicals, the acid, will also affect the pencils in how they are holding up also for fading. So you really do not want to be coloring in books that are not acid free. Now, does it mean that you should never color on an acid paper? No. If a book that you love and you're doing this for relaxation and you're not thinking of archival where you're going to want this to last 100 years, it doesn't really matter. Go and enjoy yourself. But then again, if you are choosing a book as a legacy book that you are leaving to your grandchildren and your grandchildren's grandchildren as a history of your life, your talent, and this is the way you want to do it, and believe me, it's been thought of by many of my subscribers, even myself, being that I wanted to do this too. I thought it was great. It is the questions you need to ask. Is the paper acid free? Is the pencils that I am using Lightfast? Now, I was watching some of the more advanced artists doing their paintings with colored pencils, and I'm not talking in the coloring book community. I went outside the coloring book community to people who do their own original artwork. And I was watching some of their videos on this, and there was one that actually goes through her sets and pulls pencils out. She uses Caran Dash. She pulls the non-Lightfast pencils out of her set, and she does not use them. She substitutes a different set's pencils for those. She sells her art work, and she's more familiar with doing this and more used to doing this. I have never really thought up until now, because I never really physically looked at what this could do. I've always worked my graphic art on acid-free paper. My graphite was always sealed because you have to seal graphite or it can fade away over time just being brushed off the paper. Now, what can you do if you have the situation and you have been using some things that maybe will fade over time? Well, the pages that you want to save, I absolutely recommend a UV, right here, a UV fixative. This one from Advanced Colored Pencil Final Fixative from Brush and Pencil. They have a very, very good rating, a very good testing. They are in some of the really big colored pencil contests. They and the people who put out the standards for colored pencil artwork, they have approved this product. So better minds than me have approved this, and I was pretty happy with it, with my results too. It didn't save the Arteza or the Liqui Mark, but I really didn't expect it to. They're not 100%. So here we have it's archival, it's non-yellowing. This is all the things you want to look for. It's non-toxic, yay, UV resistant, and fast drying. So this one happens to have all the qualities that I'm looking for as far as a fixative. I spray this directly into my books. This has come up under my quick questions. How do I spray my books? People are afraid, oh my gosh, you're going to ruin the book. No, you're not. What I do very easily is, say I have a page in here. I did this page and I want to spray this page. What I'll do is I'll just wrap the rest of the book in paper towel. And that's as simple as it goes. I take this page, I put paper towel underneath it. Okay, I take this page, I lift this page up, I wrap paper towel going around like a present the rest of the book, and I do the same thing for the other side. So the only thing that's being exposed to the aerosol is the front of the page that I am spraying. I've never had a problem. I've never had warping. I've never had issues, and that page is saved. See, even in this book, and this is by Hannah Corzone, I was looking through some of the information, and in this book, and they really don't discuss the paper. English edition, copyright, Gibbs Smith, the phone number. I guess maybe GibbsSmith.com may have some information if this paper is acid-free. I just haven't done it for any of my books. You could bet that the book that I choose to be my legacy book, once I start it, I will call the companies and find out a little bit of information about the paper, which is exactly what I'm telling you guys to do, the books that you do some research into the books that you're choosing. There's no way of telling if this is acid-free paper or not, even though it's one of my favorite books. So that's how I spray this. Now, if you're going to display your artwork, there's a couple of things that you could do. First of all, test with your pencils the spot where you're going to display it. Do a 3-month test before you hang that picture up on the wall. Go in, take your pencils, do a swatch of all your pencils, cover up one side of the swatch, compare it to the next. Put it up there for 3 months. If your pencils are fading and you've got a lot of UV radiation coming into that room, well, maybe it's a decision to put it in a different part of the house. Pencils should be stored under glass, either way. Make sure that the glass that you use is UV glass. And a lot of picture frames that'll come with a little sticker on it that says UV protection. Make sure you purchase the right thing that you're going to be using, and it should say UV protection. If your windows, now I don't know in my house, I wasn't around when my house was built. I wasn't around to know the specifications of the windows. So sometimes windows are made with UV protection, especially nowadays when everybody's so UV conscious. Some artwork, if you want to think about it, there's no windows in galleries. Normally that's not something that if you go into any of the museums, you'll notice there's no light in museums where they are putting pictures. Why? Because they're very conscious of pigment fading and they want to archive the artwork. It is a concern. Any questions? I'll try to answer them. I know, again, that my testing was not a standardized test. If you like what you saw and you want to see more, hit that like and subscribe. Don't forget to ring that bell for all notifications. For another video just like this one, I recommend this. And I'll see you in my next video. Take care. Keep on coloring.